Major support for these programs is provided by Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, and Perfect Building Maintenance, New York Community Bank, All Nation Renovation, Kilroy Architectural Windows, New York's Window Company, Greenberg Traurig, LLP, M&T Bank. Additional support is provided by AVR Realty Company, LLC, Briarwood Organization, Capital One Bank, C.B. Richard Ellis, James Orphanides, Centurion Holdings, Cushman & Wakefield, Dimes Savings Bank of Williamsburg, Douglaston Development, DDG Partners, Eastern Consolidated, Hal Fettner, Durst Fettner Residential, Stephen Napolitano, First American Title Insurance Company, Friedman, LLP, Accountants and Advisors, Gemini Real Estate Advisors, LLC, Genova, Burns and Gian Tomasi, Grubb and Ellis, Investors Savings Bank, Jack Jaffa and Associates Real Estate Consultants, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Institute at Syracuse University, Madison Realty Capital, Massey Knackle Realty Services, Meridian Capital Group, Margolin Weiner and Evans, LLP, Certified Public Accountants and Business Advisors, Newmark Knight Frank, RAL Development Services, The Spandrel Group, LLC, Siami Development, SJP Properties, Sterling & Sterling, Urban American.
New York City it's a city of 8 million people, and many of these people need affordable housing. And that's a big problem for New York City. Where do you put housing? How do you build affordable housing? How do you qualify for affordable housing? So instead of myself trying to answer the question, which I don't know all the answers, I brought together the true people, the experts who understand affordable housing to provide insight to my audience. My guests today include Richard Froelich, who is the Executive Vice President of the New York City Housing Development Corporation, Aaron Kaufman, who is the Senior Project Manager at the Hudson Companies, David Dishy, who's the Executive Vice President at L&M Equities, and last but not least, a returnee, my friend Eli Weiss, who is the Director of Finance and Development for Jackson Development Corporation. Since you're the returnee, and and you are wearing your green tie today, and it's your brother's bris, so this we can make Grandma and everybody happy. What's happening in development for affordable housing? Because that's such an important element of New York City.
Right. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on. I think for anyone in development, it's been a challenging 3 years. That being said, I think what we've experienced in affordable housing, the combination of banks still being somewhat committed to lend at attractive rates and at attractive terms, government agencies who work tirelessly in New York to assist in the production.
You making him feel good?
He deserves all of it, and I think you'll get that from all of us on the development side. Government agencies who are extremely creative in terms of supporting the business plan and supporting the creation and preservation of affordable housing, as well as the need. I mean, there's an actual demand, so it's a combination of...
So here is the comment. I said this prior to the taping. One of the most important things that I think the Stoller Report provides is to give the community and the people access to good information. How does somebody get an affordable apartment in New York? Mr. D, you'll start.
Well, there's a lot of ways. I mean, you can track. I mean, often folks are looking at units that are in their neighborhood. So they'll sort of see the signs, and for all the properties that any of us are doing, there's very clear signage: call this number, go to this website for that property. I know that sounds funny, but a lot of folks want to live close to where they are.
Are the signs, I'm going to ask a very sincere question. Are the signs in English, Spanish, Are they? I mean, because let's say if the people can't
Generally
have
both.
Both.
Generally both. I mean, we all sort of make pretty strong effort on that front. I
But
know
you
that
what?
sounds
okay,
simplistic,
but that's if they live in the community, and I do realize, Richard, when you provide financing, you do give a larger portion for people who are basically in the community board,
That's
correctly?
right. Yeah, I mean, exactly. About
So,
50%.
so here's the question: how does somebody find out? Because there are a couple of affordable housing, and all of you, the majority of your work is built in the new construction of totally affordable, where it's 40, 50, 60, 70%, 80% of the area median income. For my audience, the area median income for a family of four is what,
79,000.
79,000. So if you're at 40%, 60% for family of four, and so on. Now, the nice thing is that the city requires, correctly, that there are announcements in the newspaper, correct?
That's correct. And you'll see them in some of the local papers, some of the bigger papers, some of the community papers. You really see it across the board, but there are often announcements, and that's part of the process of marketing.
And then when you listen to the Stoller Report, I'm very proud that I purposely talk about this on 1010 Wins over there. But how does somebody win an affordable lottery? And I remember when I had your boss, Ron, on it, and we said it's really a great opportunity because when they built Schaefer's Crossing, they had 16,000 applications for how many units?
For that, it was about, I think, 60, 70. I mean, the ratios generally on these lotteries are
Staggering.
So explain it. It's really important. Aaron.
And I think just to add quickly is that you can also go online and register through nyc.gov.
I was
and
going to
then
say, that's the best.
Right. Yeah, so then they'll email you when buildings become available or when the lottery is about to start, usually through HDC.
So explain, how does somebody...
I mean, it takes a lot of diligence, but I think it's about paying attention. Certainly in your neighborhood, we had a lot of interest.
So fine, I know about the lottery.
Yeah.
How do I win? How do I...
Pray.
No.
It's luck. I think it's luck on purpose. I think
because I had a great doorman, and he passed on a couple of months ago. But he would always cut out the ads, and he'd come to me, and he won once or twice the opportunity to be in the lottery. His name was, and he said to me, "But I make too much money, and if I make too much money, I'm going to lose." So what does that mean, Richard?
Well, there are different levels that come up in the different buildings. And so there are some levels that are being targeted to people who are at 40%, 50, 60, up to 80. Some of the programs, we have workforce housing that are geared to 100%, 130%. It depends on the communities, whether it supports that. But it really is meant, our programs are meant to go across the spectrum for all working New Yorkers. And that's, I think, the key point.
But here's the question. Let's say you send your application, and you're drawn because it's a supervised situation over there. What if you earn? It says you earn between 42,000 to 46,400. What happens if you have a retirement? That you're getting some Social Security. What can you lose because your income is above that number?
Well, if your income's above the number, that does create a problem, and that's why we try to have certain bands that have bigger room to address that issue. But we don't. Once you're in, you don't ever lose out. That's important. If people go over income over time, they still get to maintain their unit. They still get to maintain the rent preferences that are built in.
Isn't that perhaps incorrect? That the affordable unit was, let's say when the person got into the apartment, it's like stabilization situation. The person got into that apartment because they were earning a certain level, and now that person is fortunate to be earning a certain really good amount. Why shouldn't that person be out of that apartment?
You don't want to discourage people from doing better. You want people to feel secure in their home, that once they have that home, that if they are to do better financially, that their home is their home, and it was created for them at the time, and they can grow with it. I think one of the things that we're working on a project right now in Melrose, and what we did
Melrose section of the Bronx.
Melrose section of the Bronx, that's correct. It's a very large project. It's 641 units. And we have units at 40%, 50%, 60%, and 80% of the area median income. So what we decided to do when we marketed it was to market it as one big project. And so people who are under
the lower?
Right, from the lower all the way to the top. So people who are earning too much to be in the 60%, we can then slide into the 80% units. And the people who may be not earning enough to be at the 80% units, we could slide. And even within the low income, we can move people between the 60, the 50, and the 40. Not always do you have that income flexibility.
I was going to say, I think it's important sort of some people have a Manhattan-centric view of the world, and the sort of quote-unquote 80-20s, getting into the 20% in sort of high-end luxury buildings.
Right.
That's one thing. That's sort of the, oh, I hit the lottery. But the reality is most of what all of us do is not about that. It is about more of the outer boroughs and affordable housing where you don't have that kind of disconnect. Schaefer's Land is a little bit of an anomaly. You've got folks who are paying their rents. The price is important, but also the quality of the unit is important, and they see an opportunity to move in their neighborhood. So it's not such,
Yeah, but you have another one in Northside Piers. Aren't you having a second building?
Piers is a similar, that's probably sort of a little bit in between, but that's got, you're right, when it's connected to a more high-end product, and there might be amenities connected with that, there's a perception, people are aware of that. But in a lot of the other projects that we do.
But I think that's an important comment. People from other parts of the area would look at an ad and say, you know what, I'd like to win the lottery to go to Williamsburg. But how many people, Richard, say, I want to win the lottery to move to East New York or the Melrose section?
But they may live in East New York.
No. If they live in New York, East New York, no problem. The question is, how many people saying, hey, I'm living in Manhattan, I may be in Harlem. I like Harlem, but I really don't think because it's inconvenient because of the subways in East New York.
Sure. I can tell you, I think both Aaron and I can tell you exactly, having just opened up lotteries in the last 4 weeks for 380 units in Melrose, I took in almost 10,000 applications. So that's the exact amount of demand. And Aaron, you took in a tremendous amount of applications.
About 10,000 for 139 that was available.
Now, we also had even more than that for a project in Williamsburg, one of the inclusionary zoning sites, Jeff Levine, we were talking about him earlier, that behind the Edge condo is also the Edge affordable building, all at 80%. Sold out. I mean, it didn't sell. I mean, it's not a condo, but it did immensely well. It was really well.
But you know what you bring up? I'm really happy you brought out the word sale because that's an interesting kind. Because New York City Housing Development Corporation has been on the forefront that there were the affordable co-ops.
Right.
Right, we're actually doing, there's some still limited equity co-op deals. I think you guys are probably doing them.
Talk about it. I think that's really important to bring it out,
David. It's a similar issue. It's sort of trying to bring out home ownership. It's also income-based, and you sort of make.
So where are you building this?
We're doing a deal in East Harlem. Actually, we have a couple up there. Where it's basically East Harlem bands, similar thing, several bands, 80%, 120%, 100.
So how much can somebody buy an apartment for?
You're probably in the $200,000 to $300,000.
For how large of an apartment?
150. 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms. I mean, significant. A significant discount. Not a dramatic. The homeownership stuff tends to be.
So here's the question. Yeah. If somebody's paying in East Harlem for a 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom, $200,000 to $300,000, and you have something called PS90.
Yes.
In East Harlem, and how much are the units at PS90?
Well, PS90 has a mix as well. PS90 has some affordable and some market units.
For sale?
For sale. All for sale.
So let's talk about that. I think that's really important.
Yeah.
How much are the prices of the affordable, and how much are the prices of the for sale?
The for sale product there is generally in the called $500 to $600 square foot range. Some stuff higher, some stuff probably in the upper end of that, and that's actually done quite well. It's a beautiful project, by the way. It's an old public school that was
1-800-PS90. Okay.
Well, no, but I'm saying it's a nice. But I'm saying it's because it's a good example of this kind of affordable housing.
So let's talk about the affordable units.
The affordable range is probably about 50% of that.
So somebody buys it for $200, $250?
In that range, yeah.
But they also have to qualify under this income level.
Similar thing, whole process of qualification.
And what about the sale? I remember that question of the limited equity co-ops. Let's say you sell it later on. Do you have full profit? You're letting them.
The limited equity,
yeah. I mean, the profits kind of are kind of go. The longer you're there, the bigger the share of the profit that you get to keep. And there are limits to what we want to see go on there. I mean, part of the point when we invest in affordable housing is that we don't want it to just be for that first owner. We want it to have a continuity. And so, in order to do that, we have to put some regulatory restrictions on. Otherwise, once again, that first owner, they're the winner, and after that, it becomes market, and that's not our goal.
Now,
continued affordability.
Richard, prior to the show, you were talking about this new program due to the federal government, which is aiding in affordable housing. Explain to my audience.
Sure. It's called the New Issue Bond Program, and this is a great program where the federal government, as part of some of the stimulus actions, is they're buying housing bonds from HFAs and people like HTC through Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Sort of, they're providing a review of the process, and this is allowing us to offer really low interest rates. Interest rates are starting to move up. We're starting to see that for bonds, but this program has allowed us to lock in a rate that we'll be able to use for the entire year of 2011, and that we'll be able to offer a full all-in rate of 5.35.
How much money has HDC, do you believe, that they're going to be able to put out to provide affordable housing in 2011?
Oh, at least a $500 million of bond finance money, if not more, of new money will be going out to affordable housing. Plus, we'll be putting about another $100 million of our subsidy in, which is different than the city subsidy. HCC is profitable, and we basically plow our profits
So if
back
you have
in as
$600
subsidy.
million that you're going to be able to put out, how many affordable housing can we provide for New York City?
I mean, our pipeline is both for new construction and for preservation. So for new construction, we're looking at probably about 2,500 units and probably about 5,000 or 6,000 preservation units that we'll be doing in 2011.
Now, so where are we building affordable housing today? David?
Well, I think the preservation thing is important because a lot of what's going there's existing new construction, and there's a lot of the focus right now, both in the private and the public sector, is on preservation, which is basically existing housing stock that might have been it's distressed either financially or physically distressed. I mean, it's what you read about most frequently right now, which are the buildings that might have been over-levered in the last 3 or 4 years.
But those weren't affordable housing.
Well, but some of them were. I mean, it gets back to the definition of affordable housing. That is workforce housing. In
But that's workforce housing that wasn't built as affordable
But
housing.
some of them
Some
are
of it was.
Mitchell-Lamas.
A lot of it was.
A lot of
A lot of
Mitchell-Lamas.
Mitchell-Lamas taken out. You know, we call it sort of a prodigal building, but basically returning that stuff which was taken out of affordability back into affordability. And you know, we're spending a fair amount of time focused on that now, and that's sort of an important area where basically you get the price per unit is lower in terms of the city. You know, it's a tough resource environment right now.
Right.
So from the city's perspective, you can help preserve.
I mean, there's a large portfolio that one of the special services owns in the Bronx that they're trying to sell.
Yes.
Could that go into the affordable housing?
Very much. That's that's a priority. If those buildings, some of them are in really terrible disrepair, and some of them not so much, but they're in distress. And they've got residents who are.
So why, I realize that there's the great humanitarian effort. Why do you go into the affordable? Why would you even go into that? You want to make a profit. I mean, I know you want to give back to the community, but why does it?
You say it jokingly, but I will tell you, every person
I know that.
around this rug and who works in the industry is there for both reasons.
I agree.
Part of what drives.
Right.
it.
No
However,
question, because most of the...
I'm a humanitarian. I want to be clear.
I'm sure you are.
You
I
are.
work for the public.
Look, I know that.
But for the
okay.
past couple of years, also with CRA, you know, it's really
No inside baseball.
I'm
Explain
so
what
sorry.
CRA
Community
is.
Reinvestment Act.
Which means the banks better put money in the
Banks
community.
are incentivized to invest in the community.
And the
because
Goldman
it's
Sachs
great.
Bank too, right?
All banks are included in that, yes. And that really has helped drive development. So when you go try and do a market rate deal,
Right.
it's much harder, and the amount of resources that go into it are harder. The banks are asking for more money for these market rate rentals, and market rate condos are almost non-existent in a lot of cases. But yet affordable housing, the letter of credit posting, these are easier deals. The banks are more incentivized to do them.
I mean, when you look at the starts that have gone on in the last couple of years, almost half of it has been affordable housing. It's really interesting. There's been a real ground change in that.
Right, and I think what's interesting is, as we were saying before the show, you know, affordable housing is a single and a doubles type of thing. There are very few home runs. When you look at market rate deals that got done in 2005, 2006, 2007, the structure of them don't exist anymore. But when you look at affordable deals that got done, and a lot did get done in 2009 and 2010. I mean, if Rich were to say how many bonds were issued in those years when most of the markets were dead, it's pretty staggering. They're the same structure that have been being done for years because the structure works. They're underwritten conservatively. And I think the deal
Old school economics.
Yeah, it's old school economics. So why do people get into it? Because it's a single and a doubles environment that you know is going to be there. The supply and demand metrics are there.
Here's an interesting comment about affordable housing. I did a show a couple of years ago, and I had your colleague Neil Weissman on the show. I was talking about in these communities like Melrose or parts of the Bronx or in East New York, you build the affordable housing, you also have a retail component, and the difficulty of finding retailers to go into these properties. What do you see?
It's a challenge. I mean, we just closed a deal with the new issue bond program with HTC a couple weeks ago, and it's 200 units out in Spring Creek. And there's a retail requirement, ground floor, on all of what will be a 9-building project when it's all done. And it is very difficult to find those kind of creditworthy or almost creditworthy tenants out there. And what that means is obviously you have to underwrite to a much lower retail rent. Right. Because you don't certainly want to bank on it, but it's,
I mean,
it's
because you know, that was the subject, and I remember Mark Altheim bringing out, you know, we really are subsidizing the grocery store because we need to bring in, and you know, even some market rate landlords like Doug Durst.
That's not affordable.
No. Douglas Durst did that at the Helena on 11th Avenue, 57th Street because he needed some type of supermarket.
I mean, one of the things that we like to say is that affordable housing is economic development. I mean, it brings jobs to communities and in a lot of different levels. It brings construction jobs, but it also brings permanent jobs to those communities through the daycare centers, through the grocery stores and the like. And so one of the largest economic tools that we've seen in New York is the use of affordable housing in this context, so that we are a real engine, especially in the outer boroughs, so that our projects, they're bringing a lot of vitality that just wasn't there, you know, 10 years ago.
We just finished leasing up 41,000 square feet of retail on the corner of Luis Nine Boulevard and Jennings Avenue in the Bronx, Jennings Street. And we had 41,000 square feet of retail in a building that was 123 low-income units and 85 middle-income units. And we ended up leasing the space out 15,000 square feet to a regional daycare operator who, you know, we're starting to see daycare operators become big players. But you know that the developer subsidized because it's a very large build out that's required for classrooms, and that, you know, is a subsidy for us.
But it's a very important need of the community.
Important need for the community. We own these buildings. All developers pretty much in affordable housing typically own these long term in a portfolio.
You own the retail.
Yeah, and the residential, and so having services there for your residential really only helps yourself. We put a 11,000 square foot supermarket in and an 8,000 square foot variety store. So, you know, are the rents staggering? Absolutely not.
No, but you're providing the need.
Exactly.
I mean, New York City is under retailed as it is. Right. I mean, there's urban retail is a situation, and where we're talking about sections of East New York, sections of the Bronx.
Correct.
There's nobody, you know, you're not getting Target saying, I want to open up in East New York over there. They want to move a little bit further in Spring Creek.
There's a lot of realism.
Or a Walmart.
There's a lot of realism in our industry, both at the residential level and at the commercial level. You know, we're in neighborhoods that in many cases are economically challenged or have been underdeveloped. And so there's a tremendous amount of realism in terms of underwriting and in terms of not getting overexposed and not, you know, looking 3-4 years ahead, but looking at the situation on the ground now and saying, what can I get here?
David?
But I think the chance also for the community facility uses is important. I mean, you've got, like we have that PS90 you were talking about, the National Dance Institute is now in the base of that. We had Sweet Squash at Kalahari. I mean, you've got these new projects that have enough space to accommodate these sort of important community facility users.
Now, the only thing is, and I'll age myself, I remember in many of these tough neighborhoods 30 years ago, unfortunately, you know who the community facility was leased to? It was leased to what we would call the proverbial Medicaid mill, where the doctors were churning. I mean, you remember, it was a different type of situation, as opposed to, you know, something owned by Montefiore Medical Center
or
Harlem Hospital. You know, they're always good, bad, and indifferent in the situation. I think what you've done, because I know about the National Dance Studio, I think it's a great situation. It's a great community. You get more availability and space. What about, isn't there a major development where they were planning to put the Olympics in Queens?
Right. Well, Hunters Point South, that process is still going on. There
How many?
was an RFP.
But isn't that supposed to be all affordable?
Well, it's
at different band levels that
right.
you spoke about?
It's considered what we would call workforce housing. There may be a market element where at the higher end of what we call workforce, which is 160 or 175% of AMI, which brings you to like an income of 125,000. That approaches what market is in that part of Queens. So there's going to be a mix there, but the first stage should be announced relatively soon for the first two sites.
How many units will be built?
It should be a little under 1,000, around 900 100 or so units, large towers, and it's a great opportunity. We're really excited.
But if we go out to Queens, but we go to the Rockaways were desolate for 30 years. I mean, no one went to the Rockaways, and then, the Beechwood Benjamin went over there, and then the Briarwood organization went.
One of the things what's interesting that's going on in the Rockaway, because we're dealing with this today, is a failed site. I mean, that's one of the things, David started talking a little bit before about note sales and how that's we're starting to see the banks sort of loosen up their purse strings and allow some of those
explain
loans.
what you're talking about.
But this is a failed site. There are a couple out in the Rockaways where the market was perceived to be going up, and now it's sort of sideways or down.
Was the building finished?
It wasn't finished. And so there's going to be an opportunity now. Basically, the bank is going to take a big hit.
Oh, is this the one with the husband and wife? There was a building, there's architect and something like that.
But there are a bunch of sites that are out there.
So this was this being built as an affordable housing development?
No, it was market, but it didn't work as market and actually wasn't completed. And now there's an opportunity to bring in a new developer who will finish it, but will also do it as sort of a mixed income development. And so there are these opportunities throughout, mostly, it's in Brooklyn and Queens, where there are opportunities to finish buildings and bring them in, but now utilizing some of our programs to make them have some affordability.
I hear Brooklyn, I hear Queens, I hear about Manhattan, different parts. I heard definitely the Bronx. What about Staten Island? It is a location. Is there affordable housing being built?
You've just done some deals.
We have. We just did a refinancing of a Section 8 development, and that's bringing a lot of new money into it.
Now, isn't Met Council for Jewish Poverty supposed to be doing an affordable situation?
They are. They're working in one of the projects. We also just did one with them, a groundbreaking in Queens as well with Met Council. They're involved in a bunch of different opportunities. But Staten Island, we've also done some new construction. Staten Island brings certain challenges. The community is not always as supportive for affordable housing. They also don't like the density that you basically need for affordable housing. And so there's always a bit of a dance with Staten Island. But there are certain areas where the density is permittable and works. And so we have seen some new opportunities there after a long period of real quiet.
The economy is getting better in general. There are people talking about, because I think there were only 5 new starts last year for getting affordable housing, in Manhattan. I think the residential market's strong, and I think to meet the needs of 8 million people, it's really good that people like the New York City Housing Development Corporation, the Hudson Companies, L&M, Joy Development, Jackson Development here. I'd like to thank Rich Froelich, Aaron Kaufman, David Dishy, and last but never least, Eli Weiss. See you next week.
Major support for these programs is provided by Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, and Perfect Building Maintenance, New York Community Bank, All Nation Renovation, Kilroy Architectural Windows, New York's Window Company, Greenberg Traurig, LLP, M&T Bank. Additional support is provided by AVR Realty Company, LLC, Briarwood Organization, Capital One Bank, C.B. Richard Ellis, James Orphanides, Centurion Holdings, Cushman & Wakefield, Dimes Savings Bank of Williamsburg, Douglaston Development, DDG Partners, Eastern Consolidated, Hal Fettner, Durst Fettner Residential, Stephen Napolitano, First American Title Insurance Company, Friedman, LLP, Accountants and Advisors, Gemini Real Estate Advisors, LLC, Genova, Burns and Gian Tomasi, Grubb and Ellis, Investors Savings Bank, Jack Jaffa and Associates Real Estate Consultants, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Institute at Syracuse University, Madison Realty Capital, Massey Knackle Realty Services, Meridian Capital Group, Margolin Weiner and Evans, LLP, Certified Public Accountants and Business Advisors, Newmark Knight Frank, RAL Development Services, The Spandrel Group, LLC, Siami Development, SJP Properties, Sterling & Sterling, Urban American.